Retail stocks tumble as shoppers stay away. Commonwealth Bank announces a drop in profit, and scientists discover a new planet with an atmosphere which is necessary for life. But small problem, the surface temperature is about 1,725 degrees Celsius. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Friday, the 10th of May, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. That space story, definitely for you.
It feels like you've put it in there just for me, because it really doesn't have much of a business link, does it?
Oh, well, big money. Hot? No, nothing to do with business whatsoever, just interesting.
It was a very good try there, though, Sean. I'm looking forward to the story coming up a bit later on. Also coming up later on, after the show, you have an interview with Stefan von Imhoff, who is the co-founder of alternative investing community fund Alts.co.
I sure do. Now, we've spoken to Stefan about investing in all sorts of things previously, tequila and all those sort of odd things. This time we're talking to him about investing in sport, specifically football teams and a rugby league team, which he's interested in investing in, but sort of more generally about how you make money from investing in sports teams. Very hard market to get into. Often you need to be very wealthy, but he also thinks there's big opportunities because there's something of an arbitrage between the number of people watching a sporting team and the value of that sporting team. So fascinating chat.
Yeah, it sure is. It is coming up a little bit later on. The main story this morning, though, Sean, is a big one. Fears that consumers will stop spending outside the bare necessities has hit the equities market, with the share prices of JB Hi-Fi, Baby Bunting, Super Retail Group, Nick Scali, Harvey Norman, Temple & Webster all falling sharply yesterday.
All these stocks are part of what's known as the Consumer Discretionary Index on the ASX, and that fell more than 2.5% yesterday, reflecting fears that given interest rates will stay higher for longer, people won't have much discretionary income to spend. What triggered the sell-off yesterday was bad news from retail darling JB Hi-Fi. It posted flat sales during the March quarter and its share price tumbled 4.5%. Super Retail, which owns Rebel, Supercheap Auto and BCF, also gave its sales update and said turnover was off 1%. Its share price ended the day down 5.2%. Worst of all, though, was Baby Bunting. Its share price tumbled 24% after it reported that sales are falling. Temple & Webster was another one hard hit. It dropped 18% yesterday. It's basically the same story across retail. Families don't have money after they pay for housing and insurance and education and other necessary items to spend on good stuff. This is seen in the official retail sales numbers and will be weighing heavily on the Reserve Bank when it thinks about interest rates in coming months. Certainly consumer spending, which is the biggest part of the overall economy, is stuttering along at best.
One part of this, Sean, that I find fascinating is this question, is it everyone that's hurting? Because earlier in the week, you were talking about the fact that the front end of Qantas planes are full again, that demand has never been greater for kind of your business class and your first class and your premium economy. So clearly some people are spending.
Very true. What's happening is there's a two-speed consumer pattern emerging in the economy. Those with mortgages or rental accommodation are feeling the tough times, really. But the older and wealthier seem to be in pretty good shape. Katrina Burns from Wilson Asset Management called it a mixed consumer, with older generations faring much better than younger generations, particularly under 35s. Now, Ms. Burns is a US expert, friend of Fear and Greed. She's been on the show a few times. She told the Financial Review that it's very much the same in North America, where companies like McDonald's, Starbucks, Estee Lauder, they've got the wobbles, whereas Norwegian Cruise Lines, Delta Airlines, they're doing pretty well. This whole two-speed consumer economy makes it very tricky for the Reserve Bank because on one hand, there's big parts of the population struggling to make ends meet. On the other, there's another large segment spending fairly freely. Anyway, the consumer retail stocks yesterday really felt the pinch from this slowdown in spending.
All right, so that's consumer retail. Broadly, how did local markets perform yesterday?
It's a pretty rough day all in all, with the S&P ASX closing down 1.1% to 7,722 points. We talked about the consumer discretionary stocks, easily the worst of the 11 sub-indices yesterday. Financials, real estate and healthcare stocks were also lower. The energy stocks were among the best performers. Just quickly looking at the large caps of the top 10, only Macquarie ended the day higher, while CSL, National Australia Bank, ANZ and Goodman were all down more than 1%. Wesfarmers was off 3.5%. Westpac was off 5.5% or 5.6%, but it went ex-dividend, Michael, so it had an excuse.
Yes, it did. We'll allow that. Now, checking international markets, thanks to Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au. And Sean, we don't talk about Sweden a huge amount on this show, do we?
No, we don't, but we should, because the central bank unexpectedly cut its key interest rate by 25 basis points yesterday morning. The reason it's rating a mention today is that it's one of the first developed economies that has shifted into rate-cutting mode. The European Central Bank has already signalled it's set to cut rates in June, while the Bank of England was meeting overnight. While not likely to change rates, the wording on the next move is likely to demonstrate that it's thinking about it. While in Europe, share markets are surging over there, with the Stoxx 600, a measure of the top 600 companies in the region, hitting yet another record 24 hours ago. Now, the market's up more than 2% this month alone on the back of strong earnings, and those expectations that the ECB will cut rates is a very similar story to what's happening on Wall Street and what's happening in Australia. Otherwise, Brent crude was up just a touch over the past 24 hours. Gold steady, Bitcoin's trading under $62,000 a unit, and the Aussie dollar is fetching 65.8 US cents.
All right, plenty going on. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, lower profit margins have reduced earnings at the Commonwealth Bank, though the bank's management says the economy is sound, and while households are hurting, higher immigration is helping growth.
Commonwealth Bank's March quarter cash net profit of $2.4 billion was 5% lower than a year earlier, but just higher than consensus forecasts. Commonwealth reports on a June to December balance date, so yesterday's update was just for the 3 months. The other three major banks that we've been talking about over the last week, they're a September-March basis, so their recent profits have been 6 months. That's why they're higher. 6 months versus 3 months. Got that? Good. Yep. Excellent. Over the quarter, Commonwealth... I wasn't sure. I was looking at you, Michael, and your eyes were going a little bit, a little left, a little right. What are you talking about?
Just with this general glaze over them. But no, I followed. Thank you, Sean.
Good. Over the quarter, Commonwealth Bank grew business lending faster than the average of the other major banks, but home loans and household deposit growth was lower. CEO Matt Comyn pointed to improved momentum in retail banking, suggesting it could be ending its period of market share losses, as in the Commonwealth Bank might be ending its period of market share losses. The CEO was also upbeat about the economy, highlighting that unemployment remains low, supported by business and government investment. Commonwealth Bank's share price closed down a little over 2% yesterday.
Sean, the Albanese Government has adopted a new gas strategy, locking its use in beyond 2050 and hoping it will aid in the transition to renewables, power manufacturing, and help trade partners manage their transitions.
The Future Gas Strategy, released yesterday, includes measures to help abate emissions from gas production, including promoting the use of carbon capture and storage and minimising the release of methane when gas is extracted. There will also be use it or lose it provisions whereby companies won't be able to sit on untapped reserves. Yesterday, that would be quite funny to sit on an untapped reserve of gas, Michael.
Feels like it's a very volatile situation, Sean.
Yesterday, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Rio Tinto has provided an example of the need to use gas in the transition to renewables. Rio has just signed a major deal for renewables, but firming capacity will be provided by gas. Firming capacity, excellent term, had to look it up myself. I kind of vaguely knew what it meant, but not properly. It's basically energy used to keep the grid stable. So gas will be used in weak times or, peak times, basically so that the national electricity grid works. That's what firming capacity is about.
I constantly learn things from you.
Fascinating.
Speaking of learning things, Sean, did we learn anything new from the government yesterday about next week's budget? Because, the weeks leading up to the budget are just littered with leaks and strategic data releases.
Well, the Prime Minister yesterday said there'll be $3.25 billion of extra funding for Melbourne's North East Link. Now, that piece of road has its price has more than doubled in cost since 2016. It's now about $26 billion. That's what it's estimated to cost. Mr. Albanese said total federal funding with this new $3.25 billion will go to $5 billion towards that. There's also speculation that last year's energy price subsidies will be extended and there will be a lift in Commonwealth rent assistance.
Scentre Group, owner of Westfield shopping malls in Australia, said it expects higher operating costs as a result of the Westfield Bondi murders.
Yeah, so Centre's added extra security. Obviously, that will cost the company, though it hasn't actually changed its earnings guidance. Chief Executive Elliot Rustenau said while the number of guards will double, the property group is exploring upgrades to security technology. It hopes that technology will help it prevent anything like that ever happening again. In an investor update yesterday, Centre said total customer visitors numbers across 42 Westfield centres for the 18 weeks to May 5 increased nearly 3 million to 175 million visitors in 18 weeks. Incredible. Sales are up 2.4% to $6.5 billion. Mind you, Centre's share price yesterday fell 2%.
Sean, Orica, the world's largest commercial explosives company, has reported a 10% increase in earnings due to lower costs.
That sent its share price soaring, though it did come back a bit, as did most of the market. Yesterday, it finished up about 0.5%. Orica is now up about 12% this year. It's been a really well-performed stock. It operates, or maybe I should say Orica explodes, in Australia and Asia. They're its main markets. Also in the Americas, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Gold companies have boosted demand for explosives thanks to the higher price of the precious metal, while strong energy consumption in China has driven demand for explosives from coal miners. Orica's won on both fronts. Some segments weren't so strong, namely nickel and lithium, while quarrying and construction activity is steady in this region, Asia and Australia. Orica's underlying net profit came in at $179 million for the 6 months to the end of March, up 9.5%.
One of Bonds' 5 former aircraft, nicknamed Bruce, of all things, would you believe, Sean, has left the country, bound for Honolulu. Don't know how long he's going to keep the name Bruce for.
No, the purple plane was heading to Hawaii to refuel and then off into the unknown, probably Canada, but they're not really saying where. 4 other Boeing 737 MAX 8s parked on the Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast and at Melbourne Airport will likely soon follow after being repossessed. A creditors' meeting is due to take place today, according to The Australian, to update around 60,000 creditors, including 58,000 customers. Employees have been told they will not be paid for their work in April, and customers are unable to be refunded for fares paid on cancelled flights. All but 21 of the 323 staff remain stood down without pay until at least May 14.
How about this one, Sean? New research from the Australian HR Institute shows almost 20% of workers are not proficient in their role, and 57% of employers believe the skills gap is harming an organisation.
The survey of 600 plus senior HR professionals and business leaders revealed that wage expectations were higher in the public sector than in the private sector, but public sector employees were more likely to be perceived as not proficient in their role than private sector employees. It shows that demand for labour will continue to grow strongly this current quarter, and many employers are struggling to recruit the people they want, and people are changing jobs more regularly, with 32% of organisations reporting an average annual turnover of 20% or above. That's high. There are also job losses on the horizon, with almost a quarter of employers planning to make workers redundant in the June 2024 quarter.
Sean, turning to international news now, and tension between Israel and its closest ally, the United States, is growing, with President Joe Biden saying he will not supply offensive weapons that Israel could use to launch an all-out assault on Rafah.
Mr. Biden said he's concerned for the 1 million civilians sheltering in the southern city, the last major Hamas stronghold in Gaza. Mr. Biden, in an interview with CNN, said the US is still committed to Israel's defence and will supply Iron Dome rocket interceptors and other defensive arms, but not if they're going into Rafah. The US has historically provided enormous amounts of military aid to Israel. In fact, Bloomberg is reporting a senior US administration official as saying the shipment that was halted last week consisted of 1,800 900-kilogram bombs, 1,800 of those, and 1,700 225-kilogram bombs. Just an amazing arsenal.
Yeah, quite extraordinary. Now, Sean, this was the story that we talked about at the top of the show, the story that has, well, probably slightly tenuous links to the business world, right? But it's got links to our world and future worlds
Our
and things.
world,
So
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, really. Astronomers have searched for many years, for rocky planets beyond our solar system with an atmosphere, which is, of course, an atmosphere is one of those things that's considered essential for any possibility of harboring life. Well, big news. They have finally found one.
They have, though there's probably not much life on it because it has a surface of molten rock. The planet is what's known as a super-Earth, a rocky world significantly larger than our planet, but smaller than Neptune. It orbits perilously close to a star dimmer and slightly less massive than our sun, hence the molten rock surface. It completes an orbit about every 18 hours or so. Now, infrared observations using 2 instruments aboard the James Webb Space Telescope indicate the presence of a substantial, if inhospitable, atmosphere, perhaps continuously replenished by gases released from a vast ocean of magma, according to Reuters. The planet, called Janssen, is about 8.8 times more massive than Earth, with a diameter about twice that of our planet. The surface temperature is about 1,725 degrees Celsius. Ouch. It is located in our Milky Way galaxy, about 41 light years from Earth, in the constellation Cancer. Amazing, isn't it? A light year. Do you know what a light year is? Well, I know you know what a light year is. It's actually, so it's distance light travels in a year, but it's 5.9 trillion miles.
Is it? Like, I knew the fact that it's the distance that it travels in a year, but I didn't realize that was the actual then the conversion.
Yeah, so it's 41 times 5.9 trillion miles away, this thing.
That's a long way. Yeah. That's probably a bit of an understatement. But can you imagine if you were one of those scientists who found they've been searching for ages, looking for kind of rocky planets that might be able to have an atmosphere and all this, and then finally you find one, and then it just turns out that the surface is entirely made of kind of boiling hot magma.
A bit disappointing.
Like, it would feel a little bit like you found the booby prize prize of planets, right?
I went through the wrong door. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a fantastic story. As I said, very, very little link to kind of business, but we just need one of those stories that fills us with hope.
Yes. And I don't know whether that one does, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Up next, Sean, is the Fear and Greed daily interview with Stefan von Imhoff from the alternative investing community fund Alts.co.
That's right. Talking to him all about investing in sport and sporting teams specifically. He's interested in one of the NRL, the rugby league teams that potentially is going to enter the competition in the next couple of years. So we talked to him about that and other things.
Yeah, talking about international sporting codes and various things. It was really interesting. Yeah. It is up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where you can sign up for the Fear and Greed newsletter, which comes out every Wednesday and features your thoughts on a whole bunch of stories and things. And we continue to get wonderful feedback about it, Sean.
Wonderful feedback, do we?
Yes. Yeah, I keep it from you because I don't want you to get a big head. But we do get very nice feedback. So congratulations. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 10th of May, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.